It was one of those spring mornings where joy fills the air before the sun fully rises. Birds chirped in sync with the bells of St. Andrew's Church, and inside, white flowers bloomed across wooden pews dressed in ribbons, as laughter danced in the hall. Bridesmaids rushed to adjust makeup, groomsmen toasted with quiet grins, and the bride, Ella, stood like a vision of elegance in her pearl-laced gown. But just outside, unseen and unwelcomed, a woman in worn-out jeans, a faded shawl, and tear-brushed cheeks stood clutching a squirming toddler. That woman was Ella's sister, Mariah. And while the world celebrated, Mariah debated whether to walk in or walk away. She hadn't been invited. Her sister hadn't returned her messages in over a year. And yet here she was, heart pounding like the drums of a funeral, just wanting to catch a glimpse of the sister who had once pinky promised they'd be together forever, no matter what. Mariah's daughter, Emma, whimpered from the cold wind, and she adjusted the tiny jacket around her shoulders. It wasn't about the food or the warmth inside. It wasn't even about belonging. It was about memory. About love. About the ache that comes from being forgotten by your own blood. But as Mariah took a hesitant step into the church hall, her breath catching at the scent of roses and vanilla, two sharply dressed ushers approached. "Can we help you?" one asked, not unkindly. She managed a smile. "I'm Ella's sister." They exchanged a glance. "Do you have an invite?" She shook her head, her voice cracking. "I just wanted to see her, just for a second." What happened next would haunt her forever. Without another word, one usher gestured to the other, and they took her by the arms. Emma began to cry. Mariah pleaded, but her voice was swallowed by the music that suddenly soared as the wedding march began. "Please, I just want to say congrats, I'm not here to ruin anything, please," she gasped. But they didn't listen. They dragged her out, past the rows of fairy lights, past the laughter, past the candles she and Ella used to dream about for their weddings. Her heels caught on the steps. She fell. Emma screamed. And just as the guests turned around, one of them whispering, "Isn't that the bride's sister?" Mariah was thrown out into the mud and gravel of the churchyard, a bruise on her wrist and a tear in her soul. Inside, Ella smiled for the cameras, unaware, or pretending not to see. Mariah sobbed into her baby's blanket. But someone did see. Someone no one expected. A man in a dark tailored suit, with tired eyes and a silver watch, had watched it all from his car. He stepped out, quietly, deliberately. He didn't know Mariah, but he couldn't look away. This was more than cruelty. This was injustice. That man was Gabriel Stone, a billionaire tech founder no one expected at a countryside wedding, but he had a reason to be there, and that reason would change Mariah's life forever. Gabriel Stone didn't know her name, but something about the way she held that child, with more dignity than most queens hold their crowns, stopped him cold. The laughter and clinking glasses inside the wedding venue dulled to a distant hum as he watched the scene unfold like a play no one else cared to notice. He saw the ushers shove her, the baby wail in confusion, and her knees scrape against the stone. And that was all it took. In his world, people paid attention to data, profit margins, and appearances, but not pain. Never pain. He was already moving before he realized it. "Wait," he called out, his voice sharp like command. The ushers froze, caught off guard. Mariah looked up, clutching Emma to her chest, hair windblown and eyes wide. "What's going on here?" Gabriel asked. One usher straightened. "Sir, she's not on the guest list." Gabriel's eyes didn't waver. "She's the bride's sister. You just threw her out like garbage." The other usher stammered, "We were just following instructions." Gabriel stepped forward, removing his coat and draping it around Mariah's shoulders, not because of the cold, but because she looked like the world had stripped her bare. "You don't throw family out of a wedding," he said firmly. "Especially not when they came with love." Mariah blinked up at him, too stunned to speak. Emma sniffled quietly. Gabriel bent slightly and brushed a hand across the child's tiny hand. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered. "You okay?" Emma looked at him with curious eyes, innocent, trusting. The kind of look that burned right through him. "Why?" Mariah finally whispered, voice cracking, "why are you helping me?" Gabriel stood slowly. "Because once, someone helped me. And I never forgot it." He looked toward the glowing hall. "Is your sister really okay with this?" Mariah hesitated. She hasn't spoken to me since I got pregnant. Said I embarrassed her. That I ruined our family's name." Gabriel's jaw clenched. "You didn't ruin anything. You gave life." And if she can't see that, it's her loss. He pulled out his phone and texted something, fast fingers dancing over the screen. A moment later, a black SUV pulled up. "Come with me," he said softly. "Please, let me help." Mariah hesitated again, heart warring with fear and shame, but Emma tugged at her sleeve and gave a tiny nod, as if the child knew this man's soul. They got in the SUV. Silence filled the space between them. Mariah stared at her torn shoes and whispered, "I don't even know your name." "Gabriel," he said. "Gabriel Stone." She blinked, stunned. "The Gabriel Stone, the CEO of Nexitech." He gave a humble nod. "But that doesn't matter right now." They arrived at a quiet, modern home overlooking a peaceful lake. Inside, it smelled of cedarwood and peace. Gabriel brewed tea. "You can stay here tonight. No expectations. No questions." She looked around. "Why are you doing this?" He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw his own loneliness. "Because I lost someone once. She was a single mom too. And I failed her. I won't fail again." Mariah's eyes filled. "You don't know me. I'm not special." He shook his head. "You're a mother. That's special enough." Over the next few days, Gabriel gently helped her get back on her feet. He found her a job at one of his foundation's community centers. Emma began smiling more. One afternoon, as Gabriel watched them giggling in the garden, something shifted inside him. He'd built billion-dollar systems but had never built anything like this. A family. Slowly, Mariah began to trust him. And one night, as rain danced on the windows, she whispered, "No one's ever looked at me the way you do." He replied, "Maybe they were too blind to see." Months passed. Ella never reached out. The wedding photos went viral, but not for the reason she hoped. Someone had recorded the moment Mariah was dragged out. The internet exploded. "Bride throws out single mom sister." The headline read. Comments poured in. People stood by Mariah. Strangers offered support. Gabriel's foundation even launched a new initiative, the Mariah Project, a program for empowering single mothers with housing, work, and respect. Eventually, at a charity gala, Mariah stood beside Gabriel in a soft blue dress, Emma perched on her hip, both glowing. Reporters swarmed. "Miss Mariah, any comment for your sister?" She smiled gently. "I wish her love, but I've found mine." Gabriel took her hand. The cameras flashed. But the real story wasn't what they captured, it was what came after. A home, a future, a second chance. Love not born from fairy tales, but from heartbreak and healing. And as the screen fades to black, Mariah's voice echoes, "To every woman who's been made to feel small, stand tall. You are enough. You always were." 1 year later, spring had returned to the valley, and so had the blossoms, but everything else had changed. The once poor single mom who had been dragged out of her own sister's wedding now stood under golden lights, not in shame, but in stunning elegance, about to speak to a crowd of thousands. The grand hall buzzed with anticipation. Journalists, celebrities, activists, and everyday heroes had gathered for the annual Mariah Project Gala, a celebration of single mothers who turned pain into power. Cameras zoomed in on her. Mariah stood in a flowing ivory gown, her natural curls pinned back, eyes shimmering not with tears of rejection but with strength. She looked down at her hands, once used to scrub diner tables, now holding cue cards for the biggest speech of her life. In the front row sat Gabriel, in a black tuxedo, his smile calm but proud, holding Emma on his lap. Emma clapped joyfully, whispering, "Go, Mama." The moment felt unreal. And yet, it was earned. Every ache, every door slammed in her face, every time she'd cried silently at night, it had all led here. Mariah took a breath. The room went quiet. She began, "1 year ago, I was standing outside a church. Not as a guest, not even as a sister, but as a mistake. Or so I thought." Her voice echoed, strong and tender. "I was dragged out, literally, humiliated in front of strangers. All because I didn't fit the definition of worthy. I was a single mom. Poor, forgotten. But in that darkest moment, someone reached out, not because I had power, not because I had money, but because I had value. Because every woman does." The crowd leaned in. "Tonight isn't about my story. It's about yours. Every woman here who has ever been told she's not enough. Who's ever been rejected for being too much, or too little. You matter. You belong." A standing ovation erupted. Mariah fought tears. Behind the scenes, a livestream sent her words across the globe. Millions watched. Hashtags trended. Hashtag stand with Mariah. Hashtag second chances are real. In the shadows of the gala, however, another figure watched silently. Ella. Her once flawless smile cracked under the weight of regret. Her marriage hadn't lasted. Her social circle had vanished after the viral scandal. The world had turned its back on her after learning the truth. And here she stood, behind velvet curtains, hearing the sister she had cast out become a woman the world now revered. After the event, as Mariah greeted guests, Ella approached slowly, like a ghost out of the past. "Mariah," she whispered. Mariah turned. Their eyes locked. Time froze. Ella looked tired, genuinely remorseful. "I didn't come to ruin anything. I saw your speech. I just wanted to say," her voice broke. "I'm sorry. I was cruel. I was afraid of what people would say about me, so I made you pay the price." Mariah's heart thudded. She had dreamed of this moment so many times, sometimes with vengeance, sometimes with longing. But now, standing in her power, she felt no desire for revenge. Only closure. "I forgive you," she said softly. Ella's tears came freely. You do. Yes. But forgiveness doesn't mean we go back. It just means I won't carry you like a weight anymore." She looked at Gabriel and Emma in the distance. "I have my family now. You're welcome to try again, but this time, you have to earn your way in." Ella nodded. "I will. I promise." And with that, she stepped back. Not out of the story, but not at the center of it anymore either. Mariah returned to her family. As the night sky lit up with fireworks and applause, Gabriel took her hand and whispered, "You're incredible." She smiled. "No, we are." He knelt suddenly, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Her breath caught. "You were once thrown out of a wedding," he said softly, "but I want you to walk into this one, your own, with pride, with love, and with me." The crowd gasped as she said yes, tears flowing down both their cheeks. Emma squealed, hugging them both. That moment would go viral too. Not because Gabriel was a billionaire. Not because of glamour. But because a poor, rejected single mother had risen, not by revenge, but by grace. And she had taught the world something that no algorithm ever could. The most powerful thing in the world is love that chooses to stay. The final frame of the video shows Mariah, Gabriel, and Emma holding hands, walking into the sunset with a caption below.